So I said I was going to talk about We Go in the Dark and like book talking. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I finally finished this today, and it took me a lot shorter amount of time than a lot of books lately. It still took me a while though. I used to be able to read, this is about 350 pages. I used to be able to read that in like part of a day. But college has destroyed my brain as far as reading for fun, especially being an English major. You feel a little guilty if you're reading things that aren't schoolwork. So I bought this, I want to say over Christmas break. I think that's right. Either way, it's taken me a few months to read this. And this is actually the second nonfiction book I've ever finished, which is crazy. I typically love young adult lit. It is kind of what I read all the time. But first one that I read was Stay Sexy, Don't Get Murdered. It's by the hosts of the podcast My Favorite Murder, which I freaking love. So there's obviously a theme here. But My Favorite Murder is where I got into GSK, and so it's kind of weird to be at the end of the journey of GSK because I've been obsessing over it for a little while, and I actually didn't have any interest in it until after it was solved, which was, I found out about it being solved, I think over Christmas break, I don't know, but I believe they talk about it in this book, which I read this book over last summer, and then they talked about it on the podcast, and I'll Be Gone in the Dark came out and everything, so I got really into it just because it was solved, and the reason I don't typically read nonfiction is that it's really draining for me. So with fiction, you kind of build you build Diagon Alley in your head, and then you build Hogwarts, and you return to those places. But you're in those places for a while, so you're not doing a whole lot of world building. You kind of do it once or twice, and then you're done. With nonfiction, you're constantly world building, and that's really exhausting to me. So I read this a lot before bed, which is counterintuitive, but it helped me wind down and go to sleep. This was super cool, and if I can find, there's a section that talks about why this book is so kind of easy to read. I'm looking for it while I talk. So I was never super into Bundy or anything like that. Okay, I found it. I was never super into Bundy or any of the big named killers until GSK, I think. The Bundy documentaries will come out, and I watch them, of course, because that's what you do when you like true crime. But there was never one that I was oh, I want to read about this. I didn't really want to read The Stranger Beside Me or anything. But I got really into GSK, and I think Billy Jensen wrote this part that I'm talking about. Okay, it's Paul Haynes and Billy Jensen wrote this section that kind of really explains it to me. Her prose jumps off the page and sits down next to you, weaving tales of Michelle on the streets of Rancho Cordova, Irvine, and Goleta on the trail of its killer. The amount of detail is massive, but her writing, at once dogged and empathetic, works the specifics into a fluent narrative. Just when the average reader might get fatigued by too many facts, she turns a phrase or shows a telling detail that brings it all around again. So basically, she understands that she's not writing for people who super get it, and she takes you along on this journey, and then she's wait, that was a lot, and unpacks it for you and just kind of brings humor into it. Every now and then she talks about how one of the main details in the case was that one of the victims was he had a small dick, and every now and then she brings that up, and that was a major point in the case because that was a fact that they had, and I think that's super funny and interesting. So I'll Be Gone in the Dark is about GSK, whose name, which is Golden State Killer, I don't know if I've said that, he was originally called the East Area Rapist because he was attacking the East Area San Francisco as well as the original Night Stalker, which was partly in reference to the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, even though I don't remember exactly why he was called that. Or not why he was called that, because that's obvious, but like where he was working at the time and everything. So Michelle McNamara, who wrote this book, she's also Patton Oswalt's wife, and she worked with Paul Holes and everything on this case, which is super cool. She actually was the one in her blog who started calling him the Golden State Killer and coined that term for us, which is really, really cool. And they discovered last year through genetic testing. So like when you submit your spit to like 23andMe or Ancestry, those kind of things, they don't release your DNA information, but there are different sites that you can use that you can say like, yes, use this to find people who suck. And that was how D'Angelo was found. So they found a like second cousin or some like close enough relative, and then they found out about Joseph D'Angelo, who fit into a lot of what was actually profiled, and everything, and they ended up convicting him of all of the rapes and murders, which it lists in here how many there were. It was a lot. Because he started out, when he was specifically the East Area Rapist, he was just raping, and then it escalated to murder when a victim got away. And so he kind of, this whole trajectory of becoming worse and worse. And so he was convicted for all those. There was like 50 something rapes, I believe, and I don't even think that number's right. I think I'm just guessing. But it was super good. I'm really sad to be done reading it because it's kind of, I don't know, it feels weird to be like at the end of reading about him, because I have books that I'm going to be getting on Israel Keys, and there's another one that I can't, Chris Watts, that I'm going to be reading, hopefully soon. But it's kind of sad to be done with this one though. And I never, like, Stephen King wrote a whole recommendation. I am not into Stephen King, really. The only book I've ever, like, been interested in by him is 11/22/63, which I'm not finished with yet, which is part of why I want to finish this one and the other book I'm reading. But it was just super amazing, and I recommend it, because it was super. It was just so interesting, and it was so much on like a base level of need to know. So pretty much like if you know anything, if you watch Criminal Minds or anything, you know so much more than you need to already, which was really nice. It's a good like introduction to how crimes are solved and everything, and it's a good advocate for how much just regular everyday people can do the stuff and be citizens with access to some even just some information. It was great. I don't know what I'd read it. I want to read it again at some point, but just not now, because I have like 10 books to read. So I'll Go in the Dark by Michelle McNamara was really good. It's made me want to continue reading about serial killers instead of just listening to podcasts. Because it's just really cool to get into the mind of someone that you can relate to, which is someone who's investigating this and someone who's really interested. Yeah. How to continue reading the other books I've been